Hi everyone, thank you so much for being with us this Saturday for discovering the collection of Introspective by Emmanuel Fillion. We are here in Simard Bilodeau Contemporary. We are a contemporary gallery based in downtown Los Angeles and Shanghai. We focus on a group of international artists with very well established and emerging as well. Today we're excited because we're going to present to you all of Emmanuel Fillion's sculptures. It's his first solo exhibition called Introspective, and we're going to present to you 16 marble sculptures made in black and white marble. So it's an exceptional collection. I think it's never been seen before in the US, certainly in Los Angeles, to have such amazing artworks of this quality. So if I may introduce the artist himself. So it's an honor to have Emmanuel with us. He's a French-American sculptor, and thank you so much, Emmanuel, for being with us today and
Thank you.
presenting your wonderful work.
Thank you, Eve-Marie.
So maybe you can tell us first, so this is your first solo show, and tell us a little bit about your background, how you started, and how we ended up today presenting a collection solo exhibition for you.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Emmanuel Fillion, and I'm happy to be here with Eve-Marie in this beautiful gallery. This work is a compilation of many years of ideas after coming from a very traditional background. And I think we're going to show you different type of work, which might not, when you see individually, seem to fit together, but they actually do. This here, we're next to African Beauty. We decided to sit here next to this piece because I think the most extraordinary aspect of the show is that we have black marble figurative art, which is very rare in contemporary art. It's a rare marble to find, very difficult to work with. And also, it seems that we should honor this one today.
Well, you know, it's hard to choose. Sometimes people ask you, what's your favorite piece from a exhibition? And it's always hard to say one or two. This one is very special to me as well. It's called the African Beauty, and like Emmanuel said, this is a very precious marble. It's black marble from Belgium, so it's a very precious material. And so, Emmanuel, tell me, is this a one of a kind, or how do you work the marble?
So, like I mentioned before, in my traditional background, I've been carving white marble for a while, and after a project I did in Atlanta, Georgia, I was asked by African American friends, Emmanuel, why you don't sculpt black women? And it seemed to be odd to be sculpting black women in white marble. So I never came across the black marble before. When I did, really the sound and the echo of their voices kind of like resonated with me. It resonated with me. So I decided, okay, that's the opportunity. That's the opportunity to honor the black woman. And this is the first piece. So to answer you, Eve-Marie, this black piece, the African Beauty, is really a unique piece. I could make another one or two, but they're always unique. This is carved by hand. It's polished, highly polished. The material is very difficult to work with. And I think the polish aspect of the sculpture was the right decision to kind of make them like goddess. It's to elevate, like the Egyptian did, to elevate the work to this kind of like goddess-like feel, you know, to celebrate.
It's very well done. It works because she is very sculpt from one piece of marble, and all the details, nothing is added. It's really like here her necklace is carved within the same piece as the whole figure. So it's really a fabulous work. So we can move on to another piece we want to introduce to you. This one is titled Tronc brûlé in French, which means burnt trunk. And as much as it may seem like it's real wood, it's actually black marble as well. And there's also gold leafing inside. So maybe Emmanuel, do you want to explain to us how did you came to sculpt this series of work that relates to fire?
So this, like you explained, this is representing a burned trunk. I had my studio for many years in Malibu, and I think I was impacted by the fire like many others lately. And I always thought it was very beautiful what was left of the fire, and even if we have a negative perspective on the aftermath of the fire, what happened to me many years ago is I went on a hike in the John Muir Trail, and I saw the forest after the fire, and I saw how beautiful that was and how the fire is necessary to the nature, to rebirth. So just like our souls, when we go through hard times, our relationship or anything that goes through our lives and get destroyed up to ashes, we like to rebuild ourselves and we come out better, I hope so. So this work is really contemplative aspect. I love to carve, I love to work with the aspect, and it was kind of a very challenging type of work. Technically, it's a very difficult material to work with, and I thought I wanted to enjoy myself carving the piece, but I wanted also to show a little bit more about the contemplative beauty about the aftermath of the fire.
It's a gorgeous piece. Having exhibited it before, people really think it's real wood until you really touch it. And so maybe I can add that, again, this is one piece of black marble. And how did you actually talk about how you used the what model did you use?
Yes. So this piece, it's strange because it looks like a real piece of wood, but I actually had to find the trunk that I liked. I had to burn it, which is not an easy thing. And to burn the wood, my show is very much inspired by the culture in Japan. And in Japan, they have something called susujiban, which is a technique of burning wood in construction. So they burn the wood and hide it with temperature. And when the wood is incandescent, they dip it in water, which will protect the wood afterwards. Because the wood, once burned, it won't be attacked by insects, and it will last just 3 times as long as natural wood. So this is a technique I use to burn the wood, and this is how I use the model. Just like I will use a female model to make a sculpture, I use the burned wood, to make this piece, which is definitely unique. It would be impossible to duplicate.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at the close details of this piece, it's really, you have all the tiny little details and thousands of them in really the texture of the wood. That's why you really think it's real wood. Now, you've chosen to put gold inside. What was the meaning of that gold specifically?
Well, the gold leaf inside, I hesitated. When I finished the piece, I thought it was very beautiful, but also I wanted still to bring the fire that is really the nature of the work. So I thought the gold leaf inside makes it kind of feel like it's incandescent, so it's still burning. And the beauty of the association of the two, the black marble and the gold leaf, 24 karat gold leaf, I thought it made it a little bit precious. Just like the African beauty, I used the polished finish to raise, in a way, the artwork into not something just like a figurative representation of the woman, but something more like a goddess. It was like a celebration again of the piece of wood there.
It's
A nod to fire. That's what it is. That's a nod to fire.
It's an amazing piece, really incredible. Should we move to our next piece in the second room? So this one is called songe, which means in English like a dream, right? I'm not mistaken.
Songe, yes. So songe is also more like a daydream. It could be, yeah, you songe when you, it's a thought, but like a deeper than a thought. It's really a zone you're going to, kind of like a dream, but in daytime or so. So this piece, we're going to the white marble. When you asked me before, what was my background, that's really where my background comes from. And this piece is the oldest piece in St. Not that it's old, but it's kind of like my previous work, which was very figurative, celebrating women in white marble. This is the type of work I was doing more before.
Classical.
Yeah, more classical. Even though she has a contemporary figure, pose, I like the classic of it. It's timeless. I think it could be a piece that is 200 years old, maybe even 1,000 years old, but it's made today. This woman is thinking of other things, and I will show later. So songe is really my muse here, just out of this beautiful piece of marble. There's nothing else than just representing the beauty of women.
And it's magnificent. It's an inspiring piece. I'd like to talk a little bit about the marble you use because it's really exceptional, the provenance of the marble. So maybe we talked a little bit about the black marble. Why don't you talk to us what type of white marble you use and where it's from?
Yeah, this white marble comes from Pietrasanta. I mean, actually it's Carrara, but more specifically, this is Michelangelo quarry. It's in the back mountains of Pietrasanta. It's a small town in Tuscany, Italy. This is where I have my studio, and I made all these pieces there. The white marble has been used for thousands of years, and this one in particular is the Bianco Statuario, Bianco P. It's the purest marble you can find. Has a very fine grain, beautiful white, some veins, but very light, very hard to select. And again, it's kind of like nice to show a beautiful figure like this, and with the daydream associated to it, with a beautiful white marble, which is pure like that. It kind of takes you to a different place, I think.
To me, it's a very meditative piece, yes. Very peaceful. You go inside, it's just like really, it's inspiring. This piece is really absolutely stunning. And you see the quality of the marble, the white marble, is really the transparency of this piece. You feel that it's transparent, like white transparent. And I want to say also about Emmanuel's work, I want to say that the details, and that's something that is getting lost a lot because I think most artists don't take the time anymore to really pay attention to the details, but I'm always fascinated by how you respect the anatomy. Incredible. The toes, the creases under the foot, in the back, the spine, you can see all of it. Here, the ears, even the little bumps here on the belly. It's really incredible. If we can show all of it, even the fingers. And that's the hardest part as technical part as a sculptor to actually show, to sculpt. It's really, really hard to do so. So you're really amazing at it.
If I may ask something, because you said the word that is very important, you say contemplative. When you look at the white marble, it's kind of my approach with work. I talk to a lot of sculptors, and I think there's different type of artists. Some at least they have the deep desire to express an emotion, could be negative or positive, but it's, I mean, not for me to judge on it, but just for them to express. But I think it's very important for me, because I do love to carve. It's a meditative. It's very meditative. It's just I start working and I go in my zone, and I think it reflects. I hope it transpires through the work. So I hope when people look at it, suddenly they feel like they're going to a different place and they're transported in something nice. You know, it's, I like to transpose the love and the beauty. And you see, I don't have a strong message. You know, I would say the message I let people express it or decide for it for themselves. It's really kind of a selfish way to express your talent, I think.
And beauty.
Your contribution to the world.
Well, I think that's wonderful contribution, because what I like in your work is also that you can just look at it for a very long time, for days, weeks, years, and it's just like nourishing your soul, and not questioning too complicated. So I think it's really it's beautiful. It's incredible.
In every piece, there's different layers. Of course, you go through. There's something I like to say. It's like when you work with your hands, you have time to think. So there's a lot of hours, months, years into each piece. And when you work like that, I really think there's different layers, and I could go on and write an essay on each piece about what it means and all the spiritual behind. But I believe my type of work at this time is really an emotion that is visual. So you get to the visual and you make up your mind, and I'm not imposing anything. It's up to you to come to the piece. So the piece goes to you, but you come to the piece as well.
Yeah, very well said. We'll go to the next series. This is different. So this series is your Eve-Marie collection. It is 3 pieces you've created. So Eve-Marie 1, 2, and 3. Now, this is very different than Songe. Not in the sculpting technique, but in the presentation of the work. So maybe first it would be good that you explain to us what Eve-Marie means.
So the Eve-Marie is a Western name for Kinbaku in Japan, which is the art of tidying. Not necessarily people, but it's the art of tidying object also. But it's definitely an art of the rope, which exists since the 17th century. And I've been fascinated by that, and I thought it was a wonderful way to express differently what goes on. And I think here, if the previous piece was more classical in a way, and a little bit there settled and for you to enjoy, this has much more to say about it, because people perceive it differently. There's some people who perceive it negatively, and there's some people who understand how this woman obviously is not tied against her will or express any pain. There's a lot of pleasure, and it means a lot, because I think we all entangled in life, and we all tied up in our own lives. Do we enjoy everything? I think we do some extent, because we have the freedom to get out of situations. So this is again, an aesthetic choice, but also I try to express something else, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because I think we can all debate for it, and I'd be welcome to answer questions if someone has a specific question. I wouldn't know where to start. I think it expresses so many things for me. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I agree. You know, people, like we've experienced, we've seen it differently, how people see or perceive the Shibari sculptures. I think each can come with their own understanding or perception, depending on how we're perceiving this type of art, meaning the Shibari itself. Now, like you said, she's not in pain. You really don't feel there's pain here or there's suffering. Not at all. It's actually opposite. There's pleasure, and she's very open. The three pieces are very open, liberated, I would say. So it's really like it depends on your personal experience how you perceive it.
Yeah, I think the women of the 21st century is very liberated, and I think they're very free, actually, and they're free to decide to be tied up. But really, when you get tied up, it's really by the person that loves you. You have to have trust. It's really something, when I went to visit the dojo and I saw performances, and I saw the master tied the woman or man. It's not everybody likes to be tied up or not, but when they get tied up, it's beyond anything people will understand. It's really, it's not sexual. It's a very strong emotional bond between the person that ties and the person who's being tied, and it's fascinating.
So it's built on trust.
Yes, trust is very important. For me, the trust factor is very important.
Now, technically, I'd like to add, technically, it's really incredible work. That's where we see you're like a master sculptor. These ropes are sculpted. So once again, this is just one piece of marble, white marble from Carrara, and it's a fragile material. Yes. And to be able to carve with expanded arms like this, which can fragilize the piece, you did everything in one.
Yes.
A single one piece. You didn't like add.
Right, it's one piece, and you understand it's a big piece, so it's harder to find a piece of marble like this, and to end up with like such a beautiful. Without, I mean, I've been fortunate to know there's a little bit of natural veins or spots, which are completely. I mean, personally, I love to have them, but sometimes they can disturb the perception on the piece or the aesthetics. But if you can, I will show you something here. For example, when the way it's carved, it's how I carved the wood where she's tied up against. You can see through this here all the details on the rope. That's when.
It's fascinating.
That's where you enjoy the work and you just love it.
If we can bring the camera here on this one, this is incredible. I'd like to show the details, especially here in the back. Look at those feet, those toes, creases. It's so realistic. Now, do you use a model to sculpt?
Yes, I do. Every piece I make, I use a model. But like I say, sometimes I use a model, but it's not a portrait of a model. So I can change. I can change what I show. And these three in particular, I think I went somewhere within myself to have the face. It does not represent anybody particularly that I know. It's more of an idea. It's more of an idea of a person, or maybe a group of persons, actually. And it's interesting because people who are close to me, my friends or family, sometimes they come and they say, oh, it looks like so-and-so, oh, it looks like so-and-so. And I cannot say it doesn't, because they're part of my life, so eventually, but that's what I like. I think it's something interesting when you create an artwork. It's very interesting to see that if you go within and suddenly, even though you start with models and you start with a clear line, eventually it dissolves into something that is part of you, but it's not a specific person, it's more general, and I like that.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that I think this collection of Eve-Marie sculptures in marble are probably unique.
Yes.
It's probably not been done before. It's incredible because just the uncountable hours you spend on this, because there's so many details, so much details, and everything needs to not break. So it's really fascinating. It's a wonderful collection. Congratulations. And you were talking about these little spots in the marble that are natural. I think they add to the piece.
Yes.
These ones
I agree, because if they were not there, I mean, what would be the point in a way? The marble is a natural material. It needs to be. In a way, it's kind of like if it was all white, we could make it in any type of material, but it's marble.
Yeah.
It's alive.
Oh,
it has a vibration.
Yeah, and that's the beauty, I think, of marble, because it's really natural and there's an energy to it that's different than bronze. Can you explain those spots, where they come from, into the marble itself?
Yeah, it's marble is a pure bicarbonate of calcium, so it's like it's deposit of usually metal, could be copper and iron. It depends the metal or the impurity color is depending on where it comes from. But those are really, this is the bottom of the ocean. Interestingly enough, black marble or white marble are both bottom of the ocean. The white marble is a sediment that's being cleared. And over time, millions of years in the process, and still the marble coming from Carrara is that beautiful white. And I think more than white marble, which exists in other parts of the world. We have a white marble in Colorado. They use it for the White House or the Lincoln statue in Washington. But I think it's the density of this marble which is very beautiful and very pleasant to carve. So in Pietrasanta, Italy, where I work, and the reason I go there is not just because of the marble, it's because after thousands of years, it brought together all these artisans and all these trades that a sculptor need. When I go there, I have mold makers, enlarger, modelers for clay, and also so many different trades that when you need it, it's there in a little village, as big as Santa Monica. So.
How old is a piece of marble like this? Like, how old is...
You mean the actual material?
Actual material.
No, it's millions of years, I think, yeah.
Wow, this is incredible. Now, shall we go see this incredible creature?
Amazing.
Yes. So, she's the African queen.
Yes.
She's the African queen. She's a main piece in the collection. She's absolutely stunning. So maybe I'll let you talk about her a little bit.
It started, so we're going back to the first piece.
Yes.
With African beauty. When the voice of my African American black woman friend really expressed desire, and they asked me to represent them, it was hard for me to decide how I would do that. And coming from Europe, especially in France, where we have a close relationship with Africa, we have all these islands in the Caribbean, next to Africa, the Mediterranean. So we're really close, and African people in Paris, in particular, where there's a lot of it, are perceived completely differently than in America, obviously. And what comes to me is like my memories in childhood is these African women are so strong and powerful. They hold the family. They have so much pride, and I can see that in Africa today, it's probably the change. If the change comes from women all over the world, especially in Africa, I think the future will be depending on them. So I wanted to honor that, and I wanted to show again how beautiful she is. I wanted to make her African. I wanted to mix also other aspects of the show, which goes back to the burnwood. That's why she's holding up on the trunk here. Very interestingly, that trunk was, I could have not put it there, but I needed to, because obviously carving a piece of marble and let her stand on the very narrow ankles like that, it would have probably broken. So I needed to reinforce the legs, and I thought it was a perfect representation of Africa, because this woman, after what we did in Africa, I mean, the Western civilization basically went there to take all their wealth, minerals or whatever it was, even people at time. So even though Africa has been burned down to the ground in a way by the implication of the Western civilization, she's standing there proud and looking towards the future and beautiful. Very interestingly, I didn't use a specific model, I used different models for her. But when she was finished, something interesting happened. After stepping away from that piece for a little while, I realized I had a Nigerian assistant for many years, a long time ago. I think it's about 15 years ago. And it's basically a portrait. I mean, I didn't try on purpose, but it's kind of like so. But I remember how strikingly beautiful she was. And we're here in the States, and she was this African woman, very dark black, which was fascinating. And she was so beautiful, and now there she is. So in a way, again, we're going through a lot of aspects of life and emotions and people who touched you. So I hope they'll be happy I did this for them.
It's really strong. It's powerful. She's so beautiful, and also I like when you said like why you called her queen. Like she could be a goddess, but yes. Maybe you want to explain.
The queen is. I'm not sure. It's also I think coming from language. The African queen, those women are queen in their homes. No king without the queen, right? I'm not sure. It's. I did enjoy working on that piece. It's like you can see, black marble. The advantage of the Belgian black is that there is no veins. I mean, there is veins, but you cannot perceive them. There is no really movement. It's yes. Like I'm trying to see what I can talk about really, because what's important, and you might see it here, if I want to show you, the thickness of that piece, that thickness here, and you can see this is the original crust of the marble, and you can see on this side. It's the layer of the marble. It never comes into anything thicker. So I had to position that piece within.
So you really sculpted between.
That's right.
It's that wide.
That's right, because it comes in layer in the cores. It's an underground cores in Belgium, and that's something very interesting. It's about the cycle of life. This black marble from Belgium actually originated in Africa. There were the plains of Africa, I'm talking millions, hundreds of millions ago, and the decomposition of organic matter, swamps and all, transformed slowly into black marble. And they ended up in Belgium. But this is the African tectonic plate that came and moved there. So it was kind of like taking it back,
Absolutely. She's so gorgeous. She is. So maybe we can complete the presentation of the collection itself, and I'll let you go on this side with your series, Exaltation. So here are 3 different sculptures, meaning the same mold, if I may use that word, but in different materials.
Exploitation.
Yes, absolutely.
Exploitation is an homage to Martha Graham, one of the greatest choreographers of the 20th century. She was a fantastic dancer, and she really came up with a modern dance, completely abstract. I think her trademark was dancing bodies through fabrics.
Yes.
And beautiful movements, which is very sculptural for a sculptor to see. I was commissioned by the Annenberg Foundation, actually Weingarten, Gregory Weingarten commissioned this piece enlarged in 7 feet tall to be placed at the Wallis Theatre in Beverly Hills. So I study, I work with dancers. I work with dancers from the Préjol-Cage pavilions in Aix-en-Provence. It was a fantastic experience because to be used to work with models and to have dancers do what they do with their bodies was really, for me, it was an endless source of inspiration. So I made this piece, Exaltation, and I made it originally in a small model. It came up to be designed to be in a large 7 feet tall bronze piece. But I thought it would be interesting to see the declination of the same design in 3 different materials. So we started with the bronze here. You have the bronze, traditional bronze on the polished white bronze base. The marble, the white marble, which is kind of my trademark. And finally, I thought it would be very interesting. It's a white polished bronze with a traditional yellow bronze base. But this, I thought, suddenly the piece becomes something completely different. And it's interesting to see the 3 together. You understand a bit more about sculpture. It serves the purpose of the dance movements.
I think it's really interesting because truly the difference of medium do make a difference in the rendering of the piece. The feeling is very different for each artwork, even though the design is the same. And these are quite contemporary work as well.
Yes, yes.
Well, hopefully you've enjoyed the explanation of the work. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Now we're opening the Q&A, which means you are welcome to send your questions through the chat online, and we'll do our best to respond to your questions. We have Mary Linda from Source Art that will be sharing the questions with us, and so we look forward to hear what you're curious about.
Thank you for watching.
Do we have a question?
So the first question is about how long have you been working in marble? What is your background?
Well, I started when I was 15 in a very traditional carving path, working on monuments, and over the years, and after I moved into a sculptor studio to eventually, many years later, end up in Malibu, California, with my own shop to do more decorative art, and then eventually, I wanted always to do the fine art, to do original work. So marble, I discovered marble for the first time because I was carving stone before. I carved granite, I learned in granite, I worked in limestone. I discovered marble, I think, in 1995. That's when I discovered marble, and it was the first project actually for a residence in Malibu. I carved there 30 tons of marble on site on the property for the first time, and that was the first time I carved marble, so in '95.
I have a question. You said you worked on monuments first. Can you give us a few examples, because I know they're famous.
Yes. When I work with monuments, we travel through France, and in France they have a very specific way to restore monuments, which is because I think of the material, but also the culture there. In Italy, for example, where they have a lot of antique monuments, they conserve them. consolidate and keep them as it is most they can. In France, there's a long tradition to replace the piece of stone and carve it as it was before. We've been doing this for a long time, and it's a great school because you work in different style and you get a chance to carve.
Truly carve.
Yeah, truly carve. So when I did that, eventually I ended up working in a sculptor shop, and I started to make statues, but all this in limestone. Most of the work in France was in limestone. I think the marble work was later, or the granite work was more durable, so there was not so many restoration to do in either of those materials. So that's what I did. But I worked on, to name a few, I worked on Notre Dame.
The cathedral in
the
Paris.
Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris. I worked in Chambord, a beautiful castle, many cathedrals through France. I did not work on Versailles, but I worked in Vincennes, which is another castle, the Place Stanislas. There's a different style. Basically, we work from the Roman period to the new Renaissance, which is in the 19th century. So,
Next question.
Yes, the next question is about what is it that motivates you? What is it that you are driven by? What kind of inspiration?
oh, this is hard. This is hard to say. The inspiration, I think, in life, when you love life and you contemplate, it's very contemplative. When you see people, events, we eventually get inspired by events.
I think what drives you is love.
Yeah, love for sure. Yeah, love, pain, the pains of life. I mean, I love women, so I love to sculpt women. But I think also, more than anything else, people do yoga every day. I like to carve every day. That's my yoga. You know, I carve, I meditate. I'm in my space. I love to carve in beautiful places. It's very important. I cannot carve anywhere, and I think that will change a lot. You know, it's like. It's not something, I don't conceive life without carving or modeling clay. It's a thing I like. I always liked this when I was a child. I always loved to make things and represent things. But it's hard to tell, because I think it's, when you ask like what drives you, it's like I never asked myself these questions. I was doing it as a child. I grew up in a village where they had a lot of artisans, a lot of carvers. So I saw firsthand, as a possibility, something to do, and eventually it became part of my life. And I don't ask myself. Really.
Yeah. And yes.
The next one is, how long does it take you to make one of these sculptures?
A lifetime. Any of these sculptures, time is very strange things for this type of art. It takes a very long time. I don't really account for the time, because obviously when I start, I get depressed. I mean, I spend so much time on these pieces, it's like unbelievable. But what I do, for example, I would have an idea, and it's always start with clay. I sketch, but usually I'm not a big draftsman. It's not that I don't like, it's not natural for me. I like to work with clay, so I make little clays. And they can be there like 1 year, 2 years, sitting 10 years, and then eventually one day I decide to kind of like investigate into this work, and the little work becomes bigger, and that's when I turn it into stone when I feel ready. So it doesn't really answer your questions, but I would say it's hard to have a piece that, any of this piece here, I think the least amount of time was like 2 months of carving for the smaller piece.
Mm-hmm.
The least amount of time, and I might be a little bit wrong with that. So, like African Queen took 2 years, you know. Now you're gonna ask me, you worked 2 years on it? No, I have assistants. All kind of assistants, because there is many stages in the carving process. When you make the clay, you make the cast for the plaster that you're gonna use as a model. The polisher, I don't polish all my pieces all by myself. I do, but not all of them. So I have assistants. So it's like when you accumulate the time in manpower, yes, it takes years.
And how do you choose the marble that you are, when you're at the quarry, how do you pick the marble that you want to work with?
So really, yeah, it's really, once I have the model ready, the plaster model, which we use as a model, I have the dimensions, and you have to look for the piece. And it's true, it could be a very difficult task. The black marble, even though it's more rare, I thought about it differently. I picked the marble before I looked at what was available in order for me to make my pieces, because it's very difficult to find, so I didn't want to end up with a piece that I could not make. The white marble is different. We can find it. It's very long, so we're always trying to find it. Have a little stock of marble that I can use for the future projects, and but it's about spending hours going through the yard, going through quarries, and the assistance of Italians. People look for it, they help you to find blocks. It's a teamwork. I mean, I maybe did not express it enough, but when you see a show like this, I'm not going to pretend I made everything by myself. They're all my creations. I was involved in every step of it, but I do have lots of help.
Yeah, I just want to add about that question is actually you choose your pieces of marble. Like the white marble, you're going to choose, maybe you have a few options and you're going to choose the one that you think is the most perfect.
Well, actually, sometimes we fail. What I mean by that, I've had a sculpture that I start, and we start carving, and you cannot see inside. It could happen that you see a perfect piece, and you're like, oh my God, this is magnificent, and then you start carving, and suddenly you have this big gray spot in the middle of the face. I don't mind some veiling, but sometimes if it's too interfering with the aesthetic of the piece, I have to start over.
Do we have further questions? Okay, well, thank you so much, Emmanuel. This is
Mary.
wonderful. It's really, this exhibition is amazing. I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone behind the scene, which is Source Art and Flickr Lab. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully you can continue to follow us on our Instagram and on Fillion Sculpture's Instagram as well. We're going to promote his work, continue. You're going to discover more videos, more work of Emmanuel. So please continue to follow us, and thank you so much for joined us today, and we appreciate your presence.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.